being able to be seen for your humanness and not judging yourself. And that's another thing. I think a lot of imposter syndrome stems from judgment, self-guilt, self-hate, where we impose these things on ourselves. We're judging ourselves because we are not living up to an expectation a lot of times that other people have placed on us without our permission. What's up, everyone? Thank y'all for joining me back on my podcast or my YouTube channel. If you're watching me on YouTube, Hidden Alchemy. My name is Sade. If it's your first time here, welcome. I am a wellness coach specializing in mind, body, and spirit practices that will help you to transform and alchemize your life so that you are always moving from your highest potential. For today, our podcast episode is one of my favorite topics. It is 5 ways to combat imposter syndrome. Allow yourself to shine. Now, this is something that I myself have dealt with, I would say, my entire life. And I feel like my 30s have really been the breaking imposter syndrome decade for me thus far. And really, I've just been stepping into my light more than I have ever been. And it feels amazing. So I wanted to go ahead and give y'all some tips. I wrote it down in my handy dandy notebook so I wouldn't forget anything. And just to talk about imposter syndrome, because first of all, whenever we're dealing with something pertaining to imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough, it is a feeling that is normal. This is a feeling that if you have never gone through imposter syndrome before, congratulations, you are a very lucky human being, right? But the majority of us have gone through imposter syndrome or will go through imposter syndrome at some point in our life. And I actually went ahead and looked up the word imposter syndrome just to really get what is the factual definition of imposter syndrome, because it's a word that we know, but we don't really know the actual definition. And the actual definition, believe it or not, is it is a psychological condition that causes one to believe that they are not enough or inadequate in some way. And I want to go ahead and emphasize psychological condition. It is really, imposter syndrome is something that we make up in our own mind. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and be naive to the fact that there are many ways that a person can trigger imposter syndrome or be triggered into imposter syndrome. And 9 times out of 10, everything stems from our childhood. Everything in life that we deal with in adulthood has started and stemmed from our childhood. So if you are an adult who is really in an imposter syndrome state, it's because of something that happened to you as a child. Someone triggered that feeling of inadequacy within you that you still carry in the mind. And whenever you are met with something that is challenging, something that makes you feel vulnerable and uncomfortable, because that's really when imposter syndrome really kicks in, that's when you lean back into whatever that feeling was that you received from childhood. But it is a psychological condition. So the great thing about it is we can change it. We can fix it. We can alter our mind, because it's always, everything stems from the mind. We can alter our mind so that our reality is now a reflection of a better mental state, a better way of viewing and just dealing with ourselves. I know for me, my imposter syndrome really stemmed a lot more from this notion of perfection and wanting to appear perfect, wanting things to appear perfect, wanting to look perfect. And really that's when you're stuck on perfection, it's a control mechanism, and it's a deep insecurity of being vulnerable and being honest. And when I began to work more on my spiritual practice of learning more about myself on a spiritual level through meditation, through yoga, through mindfulness, through breath work, through plant medicine, having healers, therapists, Reiki healers, all of the things, that was when I was able to understand myself beyond this physical space, beyond the material space, and know that my worth is not dependent upon how perfect I look. My worth is dependent upon something more greater than that, something that can't really be seen. It's something that is felt. So I had to get over this notion of being perfect and allow myself to be seen for being human. And that required a level of vulnerability. So working on uh, my emotional body, I would say, and being more vulnerable with people, that has helped me to get over my imposter syndrome, because it is this worthiness of being able to be seen for your humanness and not judging yourself. And that's another thing. I think a lot of imposter syndrome stems from judgment, self-guilt, self-hate, where we impose these things on ourselves. We're judging ourselves because we are not living up to an expectation a lot of times that other people have placed on us without our permission. And that really leads into one of my key tips on ways to combat imposter syndrome is really realizing that no one has the answers but you. I'm going to repeat that. No one has the answers but you. And we think other people know better than us. And in certain instances there are people, of course, elders who have experienced life, they do know better, right? But when it comes to the things that you really want for yourself, it is an internal understanding. The things that you feel that you need to do, that you're called to do. No one has that answer but you. And when you take time to isolate and boost your intuitive muscle, which will boost your self-esteem, you are now relying on your internal guidance to guide you, which in return will take you away from thinking that other people know best. Now, why is this important? A lot of times when we are allowing ourselves to be seen, sometimes we fall into imposter syndrome because we're afraid of what other people are going to think, because we have been so conditioned to focus on what other people think about what we do and other people knowing better than us, right? So when you take time to isolate, and it doesn't mean you have to spend your life being a monk, right? And meditating in Tibet, right? All you have to do is just spend some time with yourself, spend some time with your thoughts, spend some time with just understanding and understanding yourself, doing things by yourself, isolating yourself, not always needing to be around others, because that's how we become codependent on what other people think, how other people are going to feel. When you start to feel that inner knowing of whatever you believe in, a higher power, God, Buddha, Allah, when you start to feel that inner knowing of, no, this is where I need to go, this is what I need to do, this is who I am, this is what I'm called to do, you don't worry about what other people feel. You don't worry about what other people think, because they are not you and they are not called to do what you need to do. So the first tip is, spend some time in isolation. No one has the answers but you. And that's going to help you to boost your self-esteem while also boosting your intuitive muscle of knowing thyself. The most important thing you can ever do in this lifetime is to know thyself, so that you can trust thyself, so that you can really show up in your power and show up in your light. Because I believe that we are all here for a purpose and for a reason. We just have to allow ourselves to step into that purpose and to be seen for the trueness of who we are. And you can only find out the trueness of who you are through spending time in isolation to boost your self-esteem and boost your intuitive muscle. Now, my next tip is give yourself grace, give yourself praise. A lot of times we fall into imposter syndrome. Again, like myself, perfection. No one is perfect. No one has all the answers. No one has everything figured out. When you try something new, or when you are nervous to do something that's going to force you to be seen or force you to come out of your comfort zone, give yourself grace. It's like we never laugh at a baby when they try to walk. We might laugh because they might be walking funny, but we never laugh at them because they've fallen. We give them grace because we understand they're learning. That's the same way you have to treat yourself when you're doing something that is very uncomfortable and that makes you feel uncomfortable. And it might not even be the hardest thing in the world, but it's something that makes you feel uncomfortable. So you have to give yourself that grace of, man, I might flop this, or man, I might do an amazing job, but either way, I am still worthy, I am still important, and I am still loved. So give yourself grace. And then most importantly, after that, give yourself praise. A lot of times, especially when you are a person who's deeply insecure, and I'm going to raise my hand, like we've all been there, no judgment. It's hard for you to take praise from yourself, right? Of like, man, you killed that. Like, you did a great job. You're amazing. Say that to yourself. Like, it should not be weird to look at yourself in the mirror and to give yourself those praiseful confidence of like, girl, you look great. Like, you did that. You are the best. You are that girl or that guy or whatever. Give yourself that praise because it's you. It's you talking to you. Why not? And when you are capable of giving yourself that praise, then you'll be able to take it from other people. And I want to note with this one, it's more important to praise yourself than to look for praise from other people. You should not be swayed by a person's praise or critique. It shouldn't matter because you are solid internally with who you are and what you are called to do, right? So if a person gives you critique, great. If a person gives you praise, great. But none of it is more important than you giving yourself grace and you giving yourself praise. Now, my next tip is show up. Okay, no matter how fearful, and actually, the more fearful you are, is when you have to show up even more. And I'm gonna give an example for myself. I've been a dancer my entire life. I started dancing when I was 6. I've been trained ballet, tap, jazz, modern, theater, all this stuff. I stopped dancing for 4 years from 2020 until this past year. And I was having the the biggest imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm in my 30s now. Like, am I still going to be taking class with all of these, younger dancers? Like, all the thoughts, all of the psychological conditions that I'm putting in my head, right? So I'm like, okay, I already knew. I was like, the more fearful I am, the more I have to just dive in. That's just me. Some people might get their feet wet. I'm like, listen, just dive in head first because you're so fearful. And I took my first street jazz class. Mind you, I haven't taken street jazz specifically since 2019, 2020-ish. I took my first street jazz class. It was the biggest flop and fail. I'm not going to say of my life, but of that moment of my life. I mean, I could not even pick up the chord. If it was so in dance there's 8 counts, and this dance probably had maybe like eight counts. I could only get the first 8. I couldn't even perform the rest of the dance. I had to stand on the side and I just clapped everybody else on. Inside, I was cringing. I was like, oh my gosh, like I used to be this great and I'm not there. But I had to remind myself, you have not even moved like this in 4 years. So first of all, there's no way you're ever gonna just pop back up and move like that. And I also had to remind myself, you did the work by showing up. Because from that moment, I continued to show up because I knew if I just keep showing up, no matter how fearful I am, no matter how much I think I suck, at some point I'm not gonna suck. Right? It's just logic. So the more fearful you are of something, and of course, with reason, something that's not going to harm yourself, something that's not, something that gives you a little bit of discomfort because it is something new, right? The more fearful you are, the more you have to show up. The more you have to show up because it is showing yourself that you are worthy of trying no matter what happens. And even whatever happens, just laugh and just know if you keep showing up, you will get better at some point. That's my imposter syndrome story. Next tip, never quit on yourself. Never quit on yourself. And that really kind of bleeds into always show up. Never allow yourself to feel so defeated that you don't feel worthy of continuing to try, continuing to learn. And again, giving yourself grace, giving yourself praise, because by just showing up, you get better each and every time at whatever it is, but never give up on yourself. That also stems into boosting your self-esteem and your self-worth. When you feel worthy, you don't give up because I am worthy to keep trying. And at some point, it'll be better and I will no longer have this imposter syndrome. And the thing about imposter syndrome is once you like once you nail it, like once you actually get past the psychological condition, you can apply the same strategy to everything else in your life that gives you imposter syndrome. And that is how you become a magical manifester, because you are able to get over whatever mental blocks you're creating within yourself, and you're able to put yourself out there and see the physical manifestation of your dreams. Last but not least, I think this is something that we underestimate so much. Find someone who's doing what you want to do, right? Find someone who is shining in an area that you want to shine in, who is doing something that you want to do. And if you have the courage, reach out to them, learn from them, become a mentee. I've always had mentors. I'm just that person. I love to learn from people, and I don't like to struggle unnecessarily. So if I know that someone is great at something, I'm just going to ask them for help, and they'll teach me, and I'll figure out how to add my spin to it and make it even greater. But find someone who is doing what you want to do and copy. Not saying copy their whole swag, right? You can never do that, because everything stems from the internal state. But copy if they are what I'm just trying to think. For me, getting back into modeling, getting back into the arts, right? I looked at other people who were so bold to put their photos out there to the public and to put their art out there to the public. And I just started doing it myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a photo shoot. It makes me really uncomfortable, but I'm going to do the photo shoot because I really want to do it. And I want to put myself out there in a different way. And then boom, you just do it. You just copy. And then eventually you get rid of that psychological block. And then you're on to manifesting many, many more things. And on top of find someone who's doing it, find someone that is going to push you. Find someone and again, it's not their duty or responsibility, it's yours. But find someone that is like is doing what you want to do, but they're also going to push you to do better. They're going to tell you like, this is trash. Like, you can do something different. You can do better. You can put yourself out there in a different way. And a lot of times we have those people in our life and we kind of get upset with them. We think that they're telling us what to do, but really they're seeing something in us that we, because of our own imposter syndrome, cannot see. And we cannot get past that block, and we cannot put ourselves out there. So really surround yourself with people who inspire you, and find people who are doing what you want to do and learn from them, and you will not fail. And even if you do, you'll learn from that, and then you'll be even better. So that is my take on ways to combat imposter syndrome. Allow yourself to shine. You are worthy of shining. You are worthy of being seen. You're worthy of being heard. It's just you in your own way. And once you step out of your way, that's when all of your desires and the things that your hearts desire will come to you with ease. So thank y'all so much for joining me for this podcast episode. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know how you've been dealing with your own imposter syndrome, how you have overcome your imposter syndrome. And if you are listening on the podcast, still feel free to send me a message. You can find all of my information on my website, hiddenalchemybysade.com. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you for our next podcast episode.